Tonight, the absence of two words about someone I consider a great friend and someone. John and I go back a long ways, back to the early '80s. You know, members-only jackets, designer jeans, high hair, guy bands dressed as girls. During that time, John was teaching in Hamden and working at the New Haven Coliseum part-time. This is where we met. Our friendship grew, and before I knew it, I was going over his house one night a week to drink a bottle of wine, eat cheese, and we laughed, and we told jokes, we watched old slideshows that he had. He would call me up and tell me an old joke. I would call him up, tell him an old joke. And this was our relationship, and this is our friendship. So seeing John tonight brought back a lot of those one-liners. And they came back to me like they were yesterday. So John, as I look over at you tonight, I know. As I look over tonight, I'm sure you feel that this dinner in your honor wasn't necessary. I'm sure you feel that there's more important people in history who deserve a dinner. People like King Henry VIII, who said to his lawyer, forget the alimony, I've got a better idea. Or Jack the Ripper's mother, who said to Jack, how come I never see you with the same girl twice? Or Venus de Milo's mother, who once said to Venus, you never call me, can't you pick up the phone? Or George Washington, who said to his father, Dad, if I never tell a lie, how am I ever going to be president? But it was the stories that John told that I remember the most. I was not a teacher at the time, but I remember thinking, John has such a nice way of putting things. In fact, to this day, I still use some of the comments that I remember him saying in my classroom. For example, if a student gets caught cheating, some teachers might say, I would not even allow this student to reproduce. However, John would say, excuse me while I flip this. John would say, your son has remarkable ability in gathering needed information from his classmates. If a student was caught lying, other teachers would say, if you stand close enough to him, you can hear the ocean. John would say, what a fantastic imagination, unmatched in his capacity for blending fact with fiction. For the child who didn't do any assignments, other teachers would say, if he were any more stupid, he'd have to be watered twice a week. John would say, Kenny exhibits a casual, relaxed attitude to school, indicating that high expectations don't intimidate. And to the girl who keeps skipping class, other teachers say, gates are down, lights are flashing, but the train isn't coming. John would say, she's an adventurous person who rarely misses opportunities to explore new territory. But it was the Coliseum that John and I have the most memories. Get us together with a bottle of wine, and we can tell you stories about Stevie Nicks, where we had to help her out of a limousine because she was so intoxicated she couldn't go on the stage. Or John Dever telling us that he didn't want anyone to look him in the eye. Barry Manilow threatening to buy the entire building and throw the hockey team in the street. Christy Brinkley, acting stuck up. Yes, look at that. Alabama gave us t-shirts.
I still have it.
Yep, I still have mine. Fighting in the back locker room with the Beastie Boys, although we didn't know who they were at the time, until somebody came in and said, guys, that's the band. And so John and I both put them down, and they were allowed to go on stage. One time, John really saved me, big time. We were working a boxing match, and I was standing backstage. John had assigned me to a backstage area, and this guy comes by, and John says to me, nobody gets back here. You go. The guy comes back there, and I stop him, and I say, sir, you can't come back here. And he just kind of stares at me. I said, sir, I'm sorry, you can't come back here. And he keeps walking. And I said, sir, you can't come back here. And he's still coming at me. And so now I ball my fist up, and I'm ready to unload on this guy. And just then John comes out and says, no. He okay, he's okay. And so John lets him by. And later on, I said, who was that guy? He said, that's Marlon Sterling. He's ranked 8th in middleweight. That's really lucky to turn me loose on. Yes, you are. Right? So I told him to meet me in the parking lot. He never showed up. But we went from there. We spent hours watching monster trucks and days smelling the circus. However, there were times when we were looking for a guy who was chasing a woman, calling her Mrs. Exxon, all around the Coliseum. We found him. But I think I saw John laugh the hardest was a hockey game. And at this hockey game, one of the promotional was the San Diego Padres chicken. Now some people I'm sure know this story. Well, anyways, at the end of the game, the San Diego Padres chicken was going to sign autographs. And so John and I were in charge of standing near the table to make sure that nobody rushes this table, and people get hurt. Well, anyways, as we're standing there, some guy walks up, and he decides he's going to cut the line. So John says, you can't. You got to go to the end of the line. And so the guy just kind of gives him a stare. And John says, you got to go to the end of the line. And the guy says, well, you know what, man? You're a... And John just kind of looks at him. Now, everyone is standing there staring at us. They are wondering, what are we going to do? Are we going to pummel this guy? Are we going to let him go? And so I kind of step up from behind John and say, sir, you have to go to the end of the line. And he says, you know what? You guys are a-holes. And I says, I'm an a-hole? You're in line to get an autograph from a guy in a chicken suit? And John literally laughed. And I mean, broke up. To the point where even if we had to fight this guy, it wasn't going to happen because we were laughing too hard. And everyone in line started laughing. This guy just kind of slinked away and left us. But it was, it was just a very fun. I've never seen him laugh that hard. And the last story I want to tell you was that when the lights went out on a concert night, there was nobody that you would want to have your back more than John. He was no slouch when it came to handling himself. He never liked to put his hands on anyone. But if he did, you were no match for him. The story that will always link John and I together, no pun intended, was the night we were clearing out the back lobby on the Coliseum on the State Street side after a hockey game, and there were 6 guys hanging out there, and we asked them to leave, and they really kind of were all together and kind of started giving us a hard time. I don't know how it happened or when it happened, but I'm not going to go into the gory details, but at the end of the next 10 minutes, John and I were standing there without a scratch on us, and all 6 of them were walking, or I should say they were carrying each other down the street. So that's a true story. I'm proud to say, him and I went up against 6 guys and we walked out of it. John did have a little issue shaking that night when he was trying to have a beer to calm him down, but we got over it. But when I decided to become a teacher, it was John's positive attitude and belief in me that helped me make that dream come true. And so, John, I wish you all the best in starting anew, and I hope that I can be half the man that you are.
By the way, those stories are absolutely true.
All the Coliseum stories are true. Many of my gray hairs are from the Coliseum stories. Waiting up until midnight for John to get home and find out which part of his body was broken are true stories. Yeah.
Good thing she's a nurse.
Okay, before we bring up our next speaker, I got some more letters. Okay, this one is dated January 20th, 1982. To To Mr. J. Farley from Vincent Yetzi. Subject, meeting. I am writing to summarize our meeting this morning. We discussed the fact that all teachers are expected to be at their assigned duty at 7:50. You mentioned some of the problems that you have been experiencing in the morning and agreed that these problems should not interfere with your arriving on time. Please feel free to call upon me for any further advice or help. Again, some things never change. You will also make note that I read this after Mark was up, because John was up very late at night going to the Coliseum and had trouble getting to work.
That's how I got late bus duty.
So Sal and he worked out a deal and he got late bus duty. Not too many, Vinny and he worked that out and he got late bus duty. So again, some things never change. One more, and then we're gonna bring up our next speaker. This is dated